Hi BookTube, this is a tag video. I have been tagged by Alan at Big Hard Books and Classics. Thank you, Alan. The original tag was created by Bob at Robert G. Reader of Books, and it's called the To Reread or Not Reread tag. Let's get into the questions. The first prompt is, do you reread fiction? Why or why not? Well, BookTube deserves credit right now because you are slowly changing my mind about rereading. I never was much of a rereader. I hardly ever revisited a book once I'd read it. But then I hardly ever read books more slowly and carefully. That came partly from Open University, I think, as much as anything. I mean, when I first encountered BookTube, everybody was reading volumes at such a pace, and I thought, wait a minute, I've done that. It doesn't help me, that's for sure. But I used to devour books the way you eat popcorn in a cinema. It just keeps going in and being chewed and swallowed, but not much attention is really being paid to the process of eating or what it is that you're digesting. And right now I'm experiencing the benefits of rereading books. Gail Anderson Dargatt's novel, The Cure for Death by Lightning. Now, my paperback edition was published in 1997, and I'm pretty sure it was purchased new by my father, who read it and enthused about it and gave it to me. And of course, I must have read it around the year 2000. And I remember that it was a very strong emotional experience that I had with that novel, especially with the main character, because she was 17 and her parents were not emotionally capable of supporting a child. They had issues of their own, and she had nowhere to go for help, and neither did they. And so I kept the book after I read it thinking, yeah, I'll never forget that book because it had such an impact. And then when I did my winning titles TBR list, which I'm working my way through, I couldn't help but pull that off the shelf because I thought, yes, but I also loved the title. The title really drew me. And so I reread it. And I'm stunned. I'm so stunned at how much I didn't remember, or I remembered incorrectly. The setting, for example, I honestly was sure that the family lived in Alberta, just beyond the Rockies, but nevertheless in Alberta on the prairies, when in fact it was set in the Okanagan region of British Columbia, near the town of Salmon Arm. I'd forgotten that it was set during the Second World War, which you'd think one wouldn't necessarily forget, and there were plenty of hints in the book to remind you. No young men around; they'd all gone off to fight, and there were blackouts and rationing. So you'd think I'd remember that, but nope. I'd forgotten that one of the characters had fought in the First World War, and they had shrapnel embedded in their brain that doctors were not able to take out by surgery, and you can imagine the problems that caused. I'd forgotten the number of Indigenous characters who had not played minor parts in the story either. And I'd forgotten the queer representation in the book completely. That's a lot of forgetting. What I did remember, here you go, were the recipes, because the main character's mother keeps a scrapbook of all her recipes that she uses. And I did remember those. I did remember that they were very simple, homemade breads and cakes, the kind of farmhouse cooking that made me hungry when I was reading the first time. And the second time, they made me want to try a few, and I may well do. But there's the benefit of rereading fiction. So I will be doing a lot more of that, because I can see that what I think I remember, even from a book that I really, really enjoyed and really moved me, it's amazing what you don't remember. Second prompt is, do you reread nonfiction, and why or why not? Well, again, I would have said no, I don't reread nonfiction. But then BookTube is having this influence on me. I don't know, because recently I reread Alain de Botton's How Proust Can Change Your Life. And I have another reread planned, and I can totally give gratitude to BookTube for that, to Brian at Bookish Texan, because he recently waxed enthusiastic about Rick Atkinson's histories, in particular his 2-volume series about the American Revolution. And he inspired me to go out and buy a paperback copy of the first book, which is appropriately titled The British Are Coming, and covers just the 2 years from 1775 to 1777 in detail, because it's a chunky book. In fact, you can see it right behind me there. There it is. And yeah, I'm really looking forward to reading that. And I snuck a little read of just the first page. And oh my goodness, Rick Atkinson's narrative style, so powerful, even in a few paragraphs, that I thought, I'm going to enjoy this book. But in those few paragraphs, he mentioned King George III. And I recalled then, hey, hang on, when was it that I read a biography of George III? So I checked back on my spreadsheet. I read it back in 1999, and that's a long time ago, and I still have that. I don't think you can see that. That would be down this side of the bookcase, but I think my chair is blocking it. But I did think I probably should reread that biography to get more context about George's life, because the only thing that I really retained from that biography of George III was that he wasn't the most switched on political animal that ever held such a high office. He really wasn't meant for the job that he did, but there you go. I think I will reread it as a refresher and then go on to The British Are Coming. So I'm looking forward to that. Prompt 3 is asking me, if you reread fiction, what kind of fiction are you most likely to choose? And then it lists a whole load: bestsellers, classical literature, genre fiction, and then lists a load of genre fiction. Is there one that's more likely? And then I'm supposed to give reasons for my choices. Well, I think, if I'm going to do more rereading of fiction, I think these factors are going to influence my choices. One, the book has got to be complex. It's got to really reward a rereading. I'm thinking of things like Thomas Mann's The Magic Mountain. I will definitely reread that, or Donna Tartt's The Secret History. Some books have a lot going on, and if you come back to them as a more knowledgeable person, suddenly more appears in those same books. And that might be the reason I got more out of Gail Anderson Dargatt's book. I don't know. But the second thing too is if I remember enjoying a novel strongly, I think it might be worth rereading it just for the experience again, and to see if I can take anything more from it, as I did with the Cure for Death by Lightning. Or another book I've been thinking of recently is Embassy Town by China Mayville, which again I love. But if you said to me, well, what was the premise? I'd go, oh, it had something to do with language. I can't remember now. Well, that's a pity. I should remember more. So I'm thinking I might reread that as well. And the third thing is I feel that there are some books I read when I was too young to appreciate them. War and Peace, certainly, which you can see is sitting over here. It's great to read the book again. I know I'm getting more out of it than I did when I was 14. I also remember reading probably an abridged English translation of Homer's The Odyssey. And of course I need to reread that. I was in my teens. I can remember that there was this man who did a lot of traveling and then came back home and nobody quite knew who he was. And that's really all I remember. That's not enough. Prompt number 4 is asking kind of the same question about nonfiction. What kind would I reread? I think I'd always reread in the situation that I'm thinking of with Rick Atkinson. I need some context, and I know I've read a book, but so long ago, I don't really remember much about it. And I think I should refresh in my mind, what kind of life did George III live? What kind of king was he? That's going to probably feed in quite nicely to The British Are Coming. And prompt 5, if you've read a book which has been translated from another language, would you reread the same book in a newer or a different translation? Well, yeah, I'm open to that. I can't think of a situation where that's going to be needed. There is another English translation of Thomas Mann's The Magic Mountain. There's an original one made in the 1930s. I have read excerpts from the more recent translation. I don't like it. I really don't like it. So I will probably, if I reread, I doubt I would necessarily read that more modern English translation, but maybe I need to, just to experience what it's like over 900 pages. Prompt 6, how many times would you reread the same book? Oh, it's a bit laughable to talk about an upper limit for someone like me. Well, I do so little rereading. I think the book that I've reread the most is Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. I've read that 3 times, but I believe twice were for assignments and only once was for my own pleasure. So there you go. Necessity is driving those rereads. I don't know if I would have read it 3 times otherwise. Maybe. It's difficult to say, but I don't I'm still not going to get, I don't think, a lot of time for rereading. There are just too many new books, or new to me, that I really want to read. So yeah, if I ever get to retire, then maybe this will become a question I can return to and fill you in a little bit more about just how much rereading I've got planned. But yeah, I don't think upper limits are something I need to worry about just now. And prompt 7, I can see that I've already answered, because it says, what's the most recent book that you've reread? And I've talked about both of those. So thanks very much, Alan, for that little tag. It's going to be a great filler, I tell you what, because this is cricket season right now, and there's so many games going on, and the weather is cooperating, so we're not just watching it on television at home because we don't want to get wet or cold or both. So we're going out to cricket matches, and it means that my weekends are getting busy, and a tag video is really going to come in handy when I'm actually somewhere else, sitting out in the sunshine, watching, well, I say half watching a game of cricket, because let's be honest, guys, I take books to every cricket match I go to. So a lot of reading happens during those matches as well. But that's by the by. Thanks everybody for tuning in. I'll see you again in a few days' time. Take care. Bye-bye. Wait, I forgot to tag people. Ah! Can I do one of those open things, everybody? Do you mind? If you want to do this tag, obviously I always shout out to Meg at Books Off the Beaten Path, but I feel like she's done this one. If you haven't done this one, Meg, have a go. But if you have, never mind. Anybody else who watches this and hasn't been tagged, you can go ahead and do the to reread or not reread tag. Okay, everyone. Now I can say my closing properly. Take care. Bye-bye.